job this whole summer trying to get this off the ground. And this is something you don't know yet because we didn't have the April meeting, which would have been the spring luncheon, and we would have announced officers and uh, enjoyed the winners of the two competitions. We did have the KN competition, but obviously we didn't get to hear them, and we did have to postpone the Burr competition until next year. But your the officers this year is sort of a triumvirate of Roy Wiley, who is generously serving again, along with Susie Marion and me. Our vice president is Janice Van Derber. Treasurer still Kim Weil, and Carla Hammock is our recording secretary. Now, the good news is we did not have to abandon the yearbook. However, the yearbook is going to be online this year. So look for it. It's almost ready. Look for it in your email in the next couple of days. Those of our members, of course, that don't have email, we will mail it to them. So we're looking forward to as complete a season as we possibly can through the fall. It will definitely be on Zoom. I'm fresh out of crystal ball, so I don't know what the spring is going to look like, but Debbie and Gail do have dates for the spring, and we may, if we're very, very fortunate, get to meet together for some of them. So I'm glad to see you all well. I hope you've been well throughout all of this and continue to be. And I'll turn this back to Debbie for this fabulous program. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for coming, everybody. So I'm going to press the mute all button just so we don't have any interference, but pay careful attention to my talk because you'll need to know how to unmute yourself, and I'll be showing you how to do all those things on various devices. So I'm going to press mute all. I'm probably going to invite Susan once again to unmute herself because when I start to do my presentation, I want someone to verify that, yes, you can see it on the screen. So I'm going to press the mute all button now. So you're all going to see little red microphones on your squares. But I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself, but try not to. And Susan, I'm asking you to unmute just until I start my presentation because I'm going to ask you if you're able to see my screen. So just to tell you all what I'm doing, I'm sitting in front of a PC computer. And I am going to use a command called share screen. And what it's going to do is I have a slideshow of pictures. This is actually from my photo. I made a folder from my photos rather than doing a PowerPoint because I just need to show you some pictures. And Susan, when you do your travel talk, this is an option for you not to have to do a whole PowerPoint. You could just do pictures like a slideshow. And you just number them in the order you want and put them in a picture folder, and we'll go over that later. But okay, to do a visual presentation, you can do it just as a slideshow of photos in order, or you can do a PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to click the share screen button, and what you're going to see initially on your screen, you'll see me go black, and it's going to say Deborah Moran is sharing her screen. And then I'm going to click on my pictures, which are already open, and when I get that started, you should see my first photo, which is going to look like a Zoom meeting. So I'm going to do share screen. And I'm just going to ask Susan if you see the first photo up here. Oh, whoops.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Okay. So if you want, you can mute yourself or just be quiet. If I ask any other questions, then you'll be there to be able to tell me, yes, everything's fine. So I took a bunch of screenshots. You can use your keyboard to take a picture of whatever you see on your screen of a recent astronomy club meeting. And this is the way these symbols appear on a Windows computer. That's what I use. But the symbols are similar on all devices. They may be located differently. So the first thing I want to know is, Susan, can you see my mouse, which looks like an arrow
Yes,
moving around on
yes,
the screen? Okay, so
yes.
I'm going to use it to point out some things. There's only, the first things I'm going to mention are the things that are most important to enjoying a meeting. And then I'm going to mention some things that are optional. So you can stop paying attention if you don't want to be overloaded with information. But I am now recording this meeting. So if anyone wants that information again, you'll be able to see it later when we post it. So on a PC and on any device, the most important symbols are one that looks like a microphone. And right now, this microphone that I'm pointing at has a red slash through it. That means at the time I was watching this presentation, I was muted so that everybody could hear it. And it has the word unmute on it, which is the next thing that would happen if I clicked on that, or if you have a touch screen, if you touched it, it would change to unmute, the slash would go away, and I would see the microphone. I will also show you that when you're muted, you see a red microphone on your square, on a picture of yourself. Then right next to that on every device is something that looks like a video camera, and that's how you turn your video on and off. So those are the two things you most need to know. They're usually right together and sometimes separated from all the others. But if you're on a phone, everything's kind of close together. But those are the two you need most, to mute and to unmute. So to be heard and not heard, or to be seen and not seen. When we give presentations, it's less chaotic if we mute everybody, and I'll explain why in just a minute. Now, the other things I'm going to show you are optional, but notice there's a participants button here that I'm circling, and it looks like two little people together, and there's a number 42 together right next to it. So if you're wondering how many people are watching the Houston Tuesday Musical Club and are online, that little number will tell you immediately how many people there are. The chat button I'm going to show you, that allows us to communicate silently while someone is talking. It's like a little messaging thing where, and I'll explain that in a minute, but you can type questions and you can type comments without being heard using that. That's optional, but we do use that in the Astronomy Club. There's a share screen button, which is this green button, which is I'm using now, and that would be only if you're presenting something to be seen on your computer, so you can show people your computer screen. There's a record button. I am recording the meeting, so we can see it later on also. And then there's a reactions button. I have pictures of what all these look like when they're turned on. And then another thing that's very important is the gallery view or the speaker view, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But the gallery view allows you to see everybody equally large, and the speaker will be equally large to everybody you see and not bigger than everybody else. And then the speaker view allows whoever's talking to be the biggest and to dominate the screen. And we will need that for when people are performing, because they're not sharing their screen, they're just like a speaker. And if you want to see them big, you'll need to know how to go speaker view, and I'll explain that in a minute. And then there's full screen. You can click that to make it fill up your screen. This is on a computer, probably not on a phone. Or you can exit full screen and you can see other things like the chats or other things on your computer. And then very important is the red leave button. Do not click that until you're ready to completely leave the Zoom meeting. So if you need to leave early, that's a good button to push. But don't do it before if you don't want to leave, because you'll exit the Zoom meeting entirely. I will have, as a host, I have a red end button. It'll allow me to end the whole meeting for everybody, and then you'll automatically leave when that happens. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. So that's an overview. So this is just to show you when someone's giving a presentation, what the gallery view looks like when they're presented and they're sharing their screen. So the slide is still really big, but now I can see a lot of the other people listening, and the speaker is still here in green, but he's small. He's so equally big as everybody else. And one thing you can see is we have a mixture here. For instance, you can see that I had my video on, but my microphone off. This is Joe Califf, the president, and what he did was he did what I did just a minute ago. He muted everybody. So every single square has a red microphone with a slash through it. And that's another way to unmute. Once you're allowed to unmute, if you can't find your microphone anywhere else, you can go to your square and click that microphone or touch it if you're on a touch screen and unmute yourself. Okay, next. So this is speaker view versus gallery view when someone's giving a presentation. Okay, this just shows what happens if everybody has their camera off and everybody's unmuted, and everyone's muted. If we have a lot of if we need it and we need more smoothness for the person performing, you have the option of turning off your video also, and that might give them a little bit more bandwidth or a little bit more oomph to appear smoothly. But we've got some instructions for performers to where that's probably not going to be necessary. One thing on this slide, I will describe chat, but this slide shows that someone used the chat to everybody, and for a few seconds, his comment is visible to everybody at the bottom. Okay, now this is what, if you aren't presenting, if no one has a slideshow up like I have, this is what gallery view looks like. So you can just see everybody. Now you can't fit everybody on the page, so notice there's a blue arrow here. It says it's one of 2 pages. If I want to see who else is on there too, I would click this arrow and I would see another set of people. And right now I'm on gallery view, so the next thing I would click up here is to go to speaker view if I wanted the person really big and to see only a few people watching. Now the chat, I don't have the chat command up, but this is the first thing you see when chat comes, and I'm going to go to the next slide so you can see what the chat button looks like. So down here, the chat button is here. Now one thing I want to mention between these 2 slides, I'm going to go backwards. When you don't see the controls, you can move your mouse and they'll pop up. On a touch screen, you need to touch your screen and all those controls will pop up. So they may go away. Don't be alarmed. You can get them back by either moving your mouse and they'll all come up at the bottom, like in the next slide. I'll see them again. Or on a touch screen, again, just touch your screen. On an iPad, all those controls are going to be on the upper right. And your leave button is going to be on the left, far away from everything else. There's a reason for that. But you can get those controls back. So when the first person chats, they would click this thing that looks like a little bubble, like in a cartoon, that says chat under it. And they would see this square come up. No one has chatted yet at this point. And it starts out saying to everyone. However, if you click this little arrow here next to the everyone, you can see everybody else you can chat with. So it is possible to do personal messages. Here's a little arrow elevator button. I can see the first few people. If I pull this gray thing downward with either my finger or my mouse, I'll see everybody there. You can also chat to someone individually. It'll say you're chatting to them privately. So I could click on Joe Califf, and then his name would appear here. And I can do a message just to Joe, and he can do a message just to me. And then I want to go to everybody. I would click this arrow again, and everyone will be at the top. And then they can see my chat. When that happens, initially there's a little bubble at the bottom that everybody can see what the person said, and then it disappears pretty fast. But they can click chat and see the whole history of the chat. So I'm going to go to the next slide. Now the meeting's been going on for a while. You can see my elevator is down here. There's a bunch of comments up here, and we can see all the comments. So in the Astronomy Club, we use this for people to be able to ask questions while someone's speaking without disturbing the meeting. And then at the end, Joe calls on people to ask questions, or we can choose not to do that. And at the end of the meeting, I'll allow people to unmute. They won't actually be unmuted, and then they can take off their microphone, just ask a question verbally. We usually do a combination of both of those things in the meeting. So the way Joe does it, people have asked some questions while Walt was talking. At the end of the meeting, he says, oh, well, Debbie has a question about X. I'm going to allow Debbie, why don't you unmute and ask your question? So he doesn't read the question, he allows us to ask it verbally at the end of the meeting. This is all optional, so don't worry about chat if you don't want to use it. We might start experimenting with that later. But for those of you who do want to use it, if someone is presenting a talk and I see a question come up, I may allow that person to ask that question first at the end of the meeting. Now there's another fun thing called reactions. That's this button. When you click it at the bottom right on my screen, it has a little smiley face, and when you click that, these possible reactions come up. So you got like applause, a thumbs up, a heart, crying, wow, and then party reaction. If you click on one of those symbols, it will actually come up in your little square. I don't have a picture of that. So let's say you like the speaker, and it's kind of getting toward the end and you just want to show the speaker that you liked him, you can go to reactions, click on either clapping or a thumbs up, and that symbol will come up in your square on the upper left. So we can kind of silently react. Now, when the meeting ends, it's going to look like this. If I click end meeting, it will say the meeting's been ended by the host and you don't have to do anything else. It just got turned off. If you need to leave before then use that red leave button. Okay, so now I was asked to talk a little bit about performance, and I'm not going to go into great detail because I have whole instructions about that, but there's a few prerequisites we need that are best for the smoothest performances on music on Zoom. The first one is a fast, stable connection. And to do that, you want to actually physically plug in your device to your router. Now, there are actually ways to do that with a phone or with an iPad. So Gail bought an extra long Ethernet cord because her router is not, which is what connects her computers and her phone to the outside world, is not even in the same room with her piano. So there's 50-foot long cords and there's 100-foot long cords, and I have that for the performers, the link to buy those on Amazon. And then she also needed for her iPad, she needed a way to plug that cord into her iPad. So this cord has an end that looks like an oversized phone jack, but that is not on her iPad. So, but she does have a USB connection on her iPad. So what she does is she plugs this into her iPad. I think I've got a picture of that. And then she plugs her cord into that, and then she plugs the other end of the cord into a similar opening in her router. And when we practiced the other day with her piano, she was very smooth, her video was very crisp, and the speed or the quality did not fluctuate because she was using a wire to a router. When you use wireless, the speed can be very good or very bad depending on how many people in your household are using wireless and even how many of your neighbors are using wireless. So what would happen with a performance, and we're not sure if Carolyn's plugged in, but if the performance fluctuates in quality, that might mean that they're on wireless, and sometimes it's very good speed and sometimes it's very bad speed. So plugging in helps. There are also adapters for the Ethernet cord for different kinds of phones. So in my email to performers, there are adapters that have instead of a USB port, they have the type of connector you use to charge your phone. So there's an adapter for iPhones, which has the type of connector that hooks into the end of an iPhone. Then you can plug the iPhone all the way into your router with a long cord. Or there's an adapter for Android phones. So any device you can watch a Zoom meeting and that can record you, there is a way to plug it with a cord into your router. And these things are low cost. So Gail bought those things. In addition, she's going to get a stand for her iPad and use that to record herself, or to not record, but to stream herself when she's performing. And that allowed for a nice, smooth, clean performance. Now the sound is good, and I think it's good enough for our purposes, but it's not quite symphony sound. So for those, you've got mixers, expensive microphone setups. And we thought that we tried this with a violin on a PC. We tried it with a flute on a Mac computer, and we tried it with piano on an iPad, and only using our built-in microphones, not even a separate microphone. And you could hear the dynamics and expressiveness, and the sound was, we thought, adequate. So we're going to try that today. If we don't like the results, we could go into recorded performances, but you cannot play a recording adequately on Zoom. We would have to listen to recordings out of Zoom for them to be good. They get a little stuttery on Zoom. Okay, so next slide. So here's Gail plugging everything in. And this is how you can see how clear she looked. She's all plugged in, and here's her piano. Okay, now there's another prerequisite performing, and Zoom has sound settings which are optimized for voice, which are not good for performing. So I've got my violin back there. I'll demonstrate that at the end of my talk. But if you do what the vocal sound settings do is they suppress background sound, they even out all the dynamics. And if something drops down below a certain threshold of loudness, it just gets whistly and it doesn't really register. And the sound quality is worse for a musical instrument. So I have once I set my sound settings, which were 3 settings, and that was under this arrow here near the microphone. That's where I found my sound settings. I've sent out instructions for all kinds of different devices to the musicians. For me, I flipped 3 sound settings so that we get something called original sound. What that does is it basically hears the room the way it is real time. So if you have a lawnmower outside, it's going to hear that. If your dog barks, it's going to hear that. But it'll also hear your instrument much more naturally. So the second thing we need, besides turning on these original sound settings or on Gail's iPad, she now has, in the newer version, she has a single button to flip under her settings called enable high fidelity sound. So that does the same thing. It'll either be called high fidelity sound or original sound. So on my computer, I flipped 3 settings the first time, but I also clicked something which allows me to have a button up here. So I can, from now on all Zoom sessions, I can just turn it on or off with the click of a button. So right now on this slide, the original sound is off, and I can click here to turn it on. And in the next slide, the original sound is on, so it looks blue, and I know I can play my violin into it and have it sound a lot better. So from now on, after having done it the first time, all I have to do is turn that button on and off to get to it on a Windows computer like I have. And I think Android devices are similar. Now I'm going to go into our season a little bit. So we wanted this to be a practice session, but we're going to start with our actual speakers on October 20th, and we will be able to practice with them. Also, make sure they're comfortable before they come on. This is the first speaker, Sarah Faust, a friend of Gail Martin's. She is a concert pianist who had a wonderful career. She won a number of competitions, got management, had a concert piano career. But as she was trading up pianos and trading them in, as she was able to afford better and better pianos, she realized she was good at selling pianos. And she now is a co-owner of one of the premier piano companies in the country, 4 stores in the Northeast. One thing we're able to do with our Zoom meetings is easily have out-of-town speakers. So she'll be able to speak to us from her home in New Jersey, I believe it is. I think. Gail will correct me later. And she has a wonderful story. So we're calling our theme Personal Stories. I didn't start out with a theme. I started out with the ideas, and I realized I'm asking people how they got into what they're doing. It's going to be a lot of the theme of what we're going to be talking about this year. So we decided to make the theme Personal Stories for the next couple of years. So this is Sarah Faust. She'll be on October 20th. On November 17th, we have my cousin, Rosalie Jarrett, who is a klezmer singer, folk singer, musical actress, also spiritual leader, cantor in Boston. And we're going to hear her story of how she got into this field. She is actually the daughter of 2 Holocaust survivors, so I'm sure influenced her to go in this direction. We will hear from her on November 17th. On December 8th, I asked 2 percussionists from the symphony, Matt Strauss and Mark Griffith, to broadcast from their homes. I figured Zoom was a great time to do a percussion talk, because then they don't have to bring a whole bunch of instruments to a remote location. If they have something they want to show us, if they have a lot of instruments at home, they can easily do that by talking to us from their homes. So they are our December 8th talk. Matt said he was really excited about this. And I send everybody a list of the types of questions we would like to hear them answer, and they were really happy to be doing this. Now, for the second half of the year, from January through May, we already have 4 speakers who have volunteered to speak, but I was waiting to pigeonhole them into specific times until we know a little bit more about the symphony schedule, because one of those speakers is from the symphony, and in September, they didn't know their schedule the rest of the year. I think by now she will. So one of those speakers is going to be David Courtney. I met him for a Sgt. Pepper's concert that was done in 2017, 50th anniversary concert. And one of the songs we did is Within You, Without You by George Harrison. He had studied with Ravi Shankar, and he used 4, not these 4 necessarily, but 4 instruments, maybe those 4 actually, 4 instruments in his song. So one of our rehearsals was at the home of David Courtney and his wife, Chandra, here. And it was like walking, he lives in this modest house in Westbury, but you walk inside and it was like walking into India. All of a sudden you had this wonderful smell of Indian tea, and they had one wall just covered with Indian instruments. It was amazing. and it was like fantasy land over there. So I'm hoping he was very excited to talk. They teach Indian instruments, and he will speak to us sometime in the fall. I mean, in the winter. This is Marina Brubaker, another idea I've had for quite a while. She is a violinist in the symphony, and I know about 3 families from large families of siblings where every single sibling became a professional musician of very high caliber. So she's one of 5 orchestral musicians. She's got a sister in Chicago, a brother in Minnesota, another brother was in Phoenix. And she's going to speak to us. I've also asked Erica Robinson, who I grew up with, also one of 5 siblings who are either in orchestras or mostly chamber music. Her brother is principal bassist in Philadelphia. Her sister is in the Laredo Robinson Kalkstein piano trio. And so I wanted to hear, actually Gail wanted to hear too, because we're sort of musical orphans. We wanted to hear what it's like to grow up in a family where everybody's a high-powered musician. The third person I was going to ask is Ferenc Delanyi, the Hungarian violinist in the symphony. I haven't heard back from him yet, but I figured we'll establish a date and see if he can join us. He's one of 4 classically trained and Hungarian gypsy trained violinists who are all active in Hungary, except for him, who is here in the Houston Symphony. Also, my friend John Sharpley, who I understand may have spoken to you before, but I happen to know him. I grew up with him also. His mother is a longtime pianist here. I think she was a member of Houston Tuesday Musical Club, and wanted to talk to him about his composing career in Singapore, how he chose to go to Singapore, and the influences of Asian music in his compositions. And then finally, I don't have a picture of Susan, but we saw her at the beginning. I realized I forgot to ask her for a picture. So I have a picture that she might have seen in her travels, Mozart's birth house. She's going to speak to us about musical travel. So music travel that takes you to all sorts of musical destinations. We'll have a travel log, which I think we badly need in this age of Zoom. I think I'm at the end of my slides, so I'm going to do a stop share. Okay, and I'm going to go, I believe our next, I don't know if Susan wants to say a few words, but our next thing on the agenda is we have some remembrances of recently deceased people, starting with Gail Martin was going to talk about Charlotte Hillbot. So let me invite her, let me see if I can figure out how to do that, to unmute. Or Gail, if you want to unmute yourself, I'm going to do the ask and unmute. So Gail, are you there?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So I'm going to mute myself and let Gail speak.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, I think the season sounds very exciting, and there's one correction I want to make. Debbie, you might be a musical orphan, but I'm not. I have my sister Mayella, who's a concert pianist and a teacher.
Right. So Gail does have a sister who is in it. That's true.
Yes, and which brings me to Charlotte Hillbolt, because Charlotte Hillbolt, who was the piano, she was my very first piano teacher, and also Mayella's very first piano teacher. I was 6 when I started studying with her, and my sister, who's younger than I am, was 5 when she started studying with her. And then from her, we went to Ruth Burr, and Charlotte had presented me in a concert at the University of Houston when I was 8. And Miss Burr was there, Ruth Burr. And Miss Burr kind of insisted that I study with her. And so Mayella and I both started studying with Miss Burr, but then Charlotte followed. A few months later, Charlotte started studying with Miss Burr. So that's how I knew her. Now, Charlotte also was a past president of the Tuesday Musical Club from 1979 to 1981. She was a well-loved teacher in Houston and in Austin. She used to play for the Tuesday Musical Club. And at some point, she moved to Round Top. And in Round Top, she started her second career, and she became the #1 real estate agent in Round Top, and was a great supporter of the Round Top Music Festival, and went to that all the time. And I got to go out there and visit her, and I got to go see something at Round Top. So that was fun. So anyway, we'll miss her very much. She was a lovely, lovely woman, and she had so many friends in the Tuesday Musical Club. So.
Thank you, Gail. And I believe Alicia has a remembrance. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Alicia, if you already know how to, go ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to find you and send you an invitation to unmute.
I got it.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
I got it. Folks, this past June, our wonderful, just fabulous Marion passed away. And I have to tell you that literally, I think 2 or so days before she passed away, she was telling me how she was telling the repair crew how to fix her driveway and other repairs around her house. She, as one of the other gals had said, was a force of nature. Nothing seemed to stop her. A cracked pelvis, a broken hip, it didn't matter. She was always bouncing back and finding a way to perform in her like 5-inch tall heels, her red heels. And in honor of those red heels, we brought out our red shoes, just to say thank you to Marion for everything, for being the center of the front row in the chorus, for just singing amazingly every time she opened her mouth. She she was a prankster. She loved animals. As we all know, she had tons of cats, and I think a few dogs to throw in the mix. She was twice degreed, sang with the New England Opera, was a principal of a couple schools here in Houston. I mean, she just was unstoppable. And even though she did pass, I don't consider that being stopped. I think she just went someplace else and is going for it. So in honor of that, we'd like to sing a song that the chorus was working on this past spring. It's called Oceans and Stars by Amy Burnham. Friend, what will you see on your long journey? What will you see? River, what adventures do you seek on your swift travels to the ocean deep? What do you expect to find so far away from home? Friend, I miss you. I miss you. Promise you won't be gone long. River, on your way. On your way, sail on your gracious song. Waiting upon the shore, waiting for your safe return. When you will live, grow you will grow. Sing you will sing, sing. You will flow, you will live, you will live. Grow you will grow. Sing you will sing, sing, sing. You will flow. Friends and rivers go where they must go, leaving us waiting. And when they return, they tell us stories. Stories of oceans and for Marion.
Thank you very much. And let's see what's next on the agenda. Oh, Carolyn. Carolyn, I'm going to unmute you or ask you to unmute. And if you beat me to it, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, you're unmuted. Okay, so the rest of us should go ahead and mute.
Am I good to go?
Yes, you are.
Okay. I think for a lot of us, when COVID really started ramping up in March, the social isolation was pretty tough. And I think it just, in some terms, just got devastating. But it was wonderful to try to find my voice again at the end of February. I got a text from my husband in the middle of the night. He was on a business trip and I ended up in Virginia with him, and he had to come home and have open heart surgery. And we found out my dad had cancer and my mother had dementia, and my professional life blew up, and it just seemed like, you know, it wasn't going to end. But I did have a happy spot. In the summer, I got a brand new alto flute, and how it compares to my C flute, you can see the size. So the alto flute is also called the flute in G, because when I finger a low C, it actually sounds the G below what we would call middle C on the piano. So I have two pieces by Jonathan Bailey. The first one is very introspective, called From Within. And that to me did seem to symbolize sort of this introspection and a bit of depression I think I had in the fall with just not seeing my students and the not knowing what was going on with my parents and my husband. And then the second movement is called Music for Pan. We know that Pan is the satyr that, you know, runs around in the forest. And this one with the dance theme seemed to be, for me, a feeling that I was finding my voice and getting out working again. That's the first part, From Within.
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to show you a reaction. I'm going to give you an applause sign in my.
Well,
So
thank you.
thank you, beautiful. One thing I didn't do before we adjourn, I'm going to demonstrate with my violin the difference between turning on and off original sound on Zoom, so we can decide whether this is going to work. So I'm going to get my violin behind me.
Debbie, Stephen
Yeah.
McMillan here.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, one question before you start. Does it make a difference whether we also have engaged or disengaged original sound?
Not that I know of. It might make a difference if you have nice speakers for listening on the opposite side, but it's absolutely vital. It's almost unacceptable sound without it. And
Yes.
the other thing you need to do is also experiment with distance from once you've done that, in addition, we experimented a little bit with distance from the microphone. So actually, Gail, Carolyn, and I, none of us actually have even a dedicated microphone yet. So Carolyn, I believe, was playing into her computer microphone, but I believe she had the high fidelity sound that you can get on a Mac. So it's not perfect, but we can hear all the expressiveness. So right now I'm going to play just a few notes on my violin without original sound on. Let's see if I go soft. I noticed when I recorded myself, it got really whistly. When I got soft, kind of harsh. Now I'm going to turn on original sound, and it should sound more like a violin. So it's absolutely vital to have that setting, and there's a way that I have instructions for how going back to original to it's off. I have instructions for how to do that. For a musician, it's actually acceptable to talk in original sound too, so you can just leave it on however you want. Ooh, I'm getting an echo here. So so that will work. I don't know why I'm getting an echo though. Unless I'm hearing my voice through somebody else's, it could be through Susan's computer. So I might be hearing my voice through someone else's computer. But anyway, that's vital. It absolutely is vital to doing Zoom performances. It's still not going to be perfect, but I think we can try this a couple of times and see if we feel like it at least gives the immediacy of actual live performance from our homes, and it's a seamless transition from someone giving a talk. And yeah, Steve, and if anyone has any other suggestions, there are ways on YouTube. YouTube Live we can't get. I think you need 1,000 subscribers, but Facebook Live is another way to do live performance.
I asked a question.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, thanks for demonstrating that. I noticed that what it does is original sound brings in the ambience of the room. It allows everything in the room to be heard, whereas the crafted sound from the computer focuses only on the human voice. Really.
Right. So there's 3 things it does. When you have the human voice, it actually suppresses dynamics, so it evens out all of the dynamics, which does not work for music. It cuts out background noise, so that means you miss a lot of the harmonics in the instrument. But it also gets everything. So you also need a quiet room. Apparently, if you add a highly directional microphone, you can recorrect for that again on original sound and get the directionality. But you either need, without a microphone, you've got to have a quiet room. So like if I have my window open and a truck passes, you're going to hear that on original sound or on high fidelity sound. So we need ideally the cord. Yes, go ahead.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I thought that was just beautiful, Carolyn, what you played. And I wish you well for what you've been through. It's wonderful to see everybody. What was the name of the flute? I've never seen one like that. It's beautiful. It was such a restful piece. Thank you for letting me. So what is the answer? What kind of flute is it?
It's an alto flute, so it's pitched in G.
It's pardon?
It's pitched in G.
Okay.
So when I finger low C and read low C, it actually plays G. So it's a transposing instrument.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful. And thank you, Debbie, for all the explanation.
Okay, and when we get echoes, that might come from other people's devices. So but if anyone wants to practice, we can practice turning on and off our microphones. That will prevent, in a large group, that will prevent some of the echo. I might actually be hearing myself coming from someone else's room through their computer. So in a large group, that's very helpful. The last thing I was going to try was breakout rooms, but I'm beginning to think I may not have it with my subscription. I have one, the lowest price, which allows me to have up to 100 people for a long period of time, but I have not found breakout rooms. I might have to go to the next one up. That would allow us to visit, or we can visit in a larger group, just alternately turning on and off our microphones. But in a small group of say 8 to 10 people, everyone can pretty much turn off their microphones and hear each other. So that's something we could experiment with later. So if you have the fast connection, a wired connection, and I'm not sure if you were wired yet, Carolyn. I think you said your husband was out of town and you didn't know if you didn't know if she was actually has the wired. But if you combine all of those things, which Gail had, it sounded actually fairly decent. So we could hear all the, it's still not the concert hall sound of a piano, but it was good, and we could hear all the expressiveness. And we can decide whether that is acceptable for our meetings or whether we want to go to some sort of, if you record yourself and put it on YouTube, the problem is you can't play recordings over Zoom. And I'm not sure the best way to hear that communally. There's also Facebook Live, but again, I'm not sure if we have all of if that has better fidelity. But I was my first choice was if we have acceptable fidelity, like we could hear all of Carolyn's expressiveness today. And then you add a wired connection, then it's even crisper and cleaner, that we should go that way. But we'll discuss this as we go. So that's why we're doing a practice session today, to figure out what we want to do for the long term. So at this point, this is the end of our program, but if some people want to stay and discuss, I can leave the meeting running for a little bit longer.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Debbie. Janet Frost wants to thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I hope everybody was able to hear a presentation. At the minimum, one of our thoughts is possibly going longer on talks and shorter on music if we need to do that for this year. We'll just do that according to how many people want to perform and feel like they have the capability to do that on Zoom. It's very low cost to do all the things you need to do to get acceptable.
So Debbie, I want to thank you immensely because you've obviously done a lot of work on it to make it possible for the club. And I think we all need to applaud you and what you've done. And,
thank you. I knew this is possible from the astronomy club meetings I've been going to.
Right.
I've done some speaking there,
right.
and it really feels like we're all together. It's great.
Yeah.
At the end of talks, we'll allow people to unmute themselves and ask questions verbally, just as if we were in an auditorium together. So we'll probably run it where I mute everybody. Right now, I was not militant about it, but probably when we do the musical performances, I will mute everybody and not even allow them to unmute while someone's playing music, except for the person playing music. And that gives us the best chance of hearing them well. So someone's, in our family reunion, my cousin Iris, who's 90, all of a sudden answered a phone call and she wasn't muted. So all of a sudden we start hearing her talking on the phone. So it's pretty important during presentations for everybody to be muted. And we can also try adding, even turning off our video. But I think if the person is actually plugged in with a wire to their router, that's, they'll have good steady speed when they bandwidth when they perform.
Debbie, can you hear me? Can
Yes,
you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. One thing that I just wanted to say is Miss Burr would talk about the early Tuesday musical club meetings. People met in each other's homes. And there are people who know more than I do about this. But Miss Ima Hogg had her amazing, gorgeous home, and people would go and meet there. And I think that there were probably 2 pianos to play on. And Sharon Lay has offered, if there's a shy pianist who wants to, or a pianist with a piano out of tune who wants to play on a beautiful instrument, Sharon Lay has 2 9-foot pianos in her home. And, it can be like a family. We can wear masks, we can wash our hands, we can do whatever we need to do. But I'm thinking that this might be like a return in a way to an intimate club, because today felt intimate. And I loved hearing the singing. That was a beautiful tribute. Just a beautiful song. I know that the sound would be better in person, and I look forward to that. But it was wonderful to hear that, and the flute was just absolutely gorgeous. So I feel like Carolyn is pipering us into the future. She's giving everyone courage. And I'm gonna have to step up and play at the next one, I think.
Yes, we need pianists next time. We have a piano talk.
Yeah,
so
and I bought my piano from Sarah Faust. So
Oh, wow.
fantastic.
So
Next time
have
would
to
be a
show
great
it.
time for the pianist to step up. It's a solo instrument, which is good while we're social distancing. So if if anyone else would like to play piano next time, that would be terrific.
And any instrument, any voice,
and the
we're
other thing,
flexible.
Right. So I would also like to mention, we also had an offer from Isabel Gantz for her house. I would recommend, that would allow us to do ensembles, but I recommend anyone who's not a wind instrument wear a mask in that setting, not have too many people at once, maybe even open a window if we need to, because we do have this aerosol problem. But we also have, so we have 2 offers of large houses, Isabel Gantz, in different parts of the city too, and Sharon Lay. So that would allow maybe a small ensemble or a pianist and a soloist to play together in a nice open space. And we just need to get all the sound set up. But again, the basics were very inexpensive, maybe $15 or $20 for an ultra long cord if you don't have your router where your piano is, and very inexpensive to get the adapter. So anyone who's performing, I'll resend all the instructions on how to get together what you need. And we'll also do a practice session before with both the speakers, and we do that in the Astronomy Club. We offer practice Zoom sessions with our speakers and with the performers, and we can experiment. So somebody else can listen on Zoom and see what the best sound is for that particular person, that particular room, and their particular equipment. So we'll start out that way. And do I do recommend all musicians that we do a practice session before, and make sure that we have everything all together for the best possible sound on Zoom. And anyway, I thought this is nice. I thought this worked out pretty well. So if you guys concur, we'll make adjustments as we need along the way if we need to this year. Again, the good thing is we get Sarah Faust, and we can get people where it's actually convenience that they're in their homes, either from
Yes.
out of town, or they have a whole lot of instruments there. And we would have only been able to bring maybe a couple of Indian instruments to a talk at this church, but if this wall is covered with them, I'm hoping you'll show us that.